I've been journaling for the better part of my life, and it is honestly one of the most important habits I've ever built. Without it, I would not be anywhere near the level of self-awareness, self-confidence, and general understanding of what my goals are, what's important to me, and what I really like doing. But as with any habit, getting started can be difficult, and I think journaling can be especially difficult because it is a very active process. Writing about yourself, how you feel, digging into those emotions and then putting them on paper is a difficult process, and it's a lot to ask of yourself if it's something you've never done before. Even though I've been journaling for most of my life so far, I still have plenty of times where it's difficult for me to keep up the habit. There have been times where I've stopped for a week or a couple weeks at a time, even up to a month, and every time I try to get back into it, it's so difficult. With that said, I still highly recommend that everyone try journaling to understand themselves better and dig deeper into the way that they feel, no matter how hard it is to actually establish the habit. So with that, here are 5 of the best ways I've found to build the journaling habit and make it stick. Number 1 is to commit to honesty. Now, back when I was starting out journaling, I was probably about 12 or 13 years old, and my mom actually suggested that I keep a diary. At the time, I was just writing about my days, what I ate for lunch, what I spent the afternoon doing, what kind of homework I had, what projects I was working on, what I did for fun. I didn't go beyond the surface level. I didn't really know how to, and I didn't feel any need to. And for those first few years, that's right about where it stayed. But eventually, as my emotions became more complex and my life became more complex, I began to try to understand the way that I felt a little bit more. And that's where this came into play. But even to this day, I still struggle to get my full feelings out on paper, especially when I perceive them as something that's negative. If I'm feeling anxious or worried about something that I think I shouldn't be worried about, I find it difficult to say that even though no one else is going to read it. If something embarrassing happened to me, I don't want to write that on paper. But ultimately, it's those things that we feel are too shameful or difficult to share that end up typically being the way that we grow the most. So if you're going to make journaling impactful and something that's worth your time and energy, you have to be honest. My second piece of advice is to start small. Now, this is the key to every habit you could ever build. See, I used to always jump in very ambitious when I was first building a habit. I'd put out a 30-day plan and go really hard for that month. But then the habit would fizzle out. A lot of times it would fizzle out before I even reached the 1-month mark because I tried to introduce so much change at the wrong time. So instead, I've adopted the mentality of slowly building the habits. So my favorite way to do this when I'm journaling is just to write 1 sentence or maybe 3 sentences max about what I did or how I felt, essentially the most important takeaway from that day. It doesn't need to be a full page or even a full paragraph. As long as you can identify one thing that's important to take away, you're well on your way to building the habit of journaling and reaping the benefits that it gives. My third piece of advice is to pick the right time to journal. This is another key with habit building to make sure you put it into your existing routine. A lot of people tend to think about journaling as something to be done at the end of the night just before bed. The Stoic philosopher Seneca talks about this, about taking stock of his day and leaving no stone unturned about everything he did as he's journaling at the end of the day. There are definitely a ton of benefits to that, but there's also the risk that you're just going to be too tired. I have put my journal on my nightstand plenty of times only to go to bed without opening it because I don't have the mental capacity to write just before I get in bed. So instead, I take time in the evening after I'm done work, but it might work best for you in the morning before you go to work if you already have some kind of morning routine set up. Figure out what your routine is, where you already have that downtime that would lend itself well to journaling, and slot it in there. Number 4, pat yourself on the back. This is key as you're journaling to make the habit stick. Now, it can feel very awkward at first, especially the first time you try to praise yourself in any way, but it's definitely a key to making this habit beneficial. See, instead of just focusing on the negative all the time or the bad feelings that you feel, you also need to add some positive reinforcement. So pat yourself on the back for good things that you do. This is just generally a good practice to get in the habit of positive self-talk, and journaling is a great way to do that. If all you do is talk about your problems and the negative things in your life, then journaling is going to bring you down. But if instead you talk about how you're solving those problems, the good things that you did even in the middle of a bad day, that will elevate the experience and help you reorient yourself to those good things while you also work through the difficult parts. And number 5, my last piece of advice is to make it fun. I use these Micron fine liner pens, which I really like how they write, and I use fun journal designs. I doodle in my journal sometimes. The more you can do to build that positive loop to make journaling something that you look forward to doing, that you enjoy doing, the more fun you can make it, the more likely you'll be to stick with it. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, well, I've tried journaling before and I never could get into the habit. Why should I even try it in the first place? What benefits have you experienced? Now, I've talked about self-awareness as a key benefit of journaling, but here's what that's looked like for me. So one of the particular ways that journaling has helped me become more self-aware is to understand what I actually enjoy spending time on. See, a lot of times days can pass by in pretty much a blur. I wake up, walk the dogs, get ready, go to work, eat lunch, finish my work, do things around the house, cook, clean, and then all of a sudden, before I know it, it's time for bed. So when I'm journaling, I can not only take stock of where I'm putting my time, but I can also look at which things I actually enjoyed doing out of my day and which I didn't. Intuitively, of course, I know a lot of things that I enjoy doing, playing basketball or my other hobbies. I enjoy doing those and I know that. But then there's smaller pieces of the day that I only realized I enjoy doing while I was journaling. One of those things was writing. I never really expressed myself on a written page before, but because of journaling, I realized that I actually enjoyed that, and so I started a blog out of it, which has brought me satisfaction and fulfillment. And beyond the self-awareness, journaling helps me to process difficult emotions. When I'm feeling frustrated or tired or upset, it can be difficult to break the mental rut. See, once one thing goes wrong and I'm in a bad mood, then everything seems to add to it, and I don't know how to turn my mood around. But instead, if I just write the feeling down, first of all, I give it less power by naming it and having it written down, but I also allow myself to understand why I'm feeling that way and see the solution more clearly. An example is that sometimes I'm going into an important client meeting at work and I feel very anxious. And that anxiety keeps me from performing to the best of my abilities in the meeting. So instead I just write it down beforehand, and writing it down helps me to realize how I'm feeling and let the feeling become less strong. But then it also helps me to rationalize it, to see why it might not be something that I should let consume me. So as I make it a habit to just take each negative feeling or emotion to my journal, I start to see the reasons why I'm feeling them and find next steps to move through them. And one of the other important benefits I've gotten out of journaling is having a physical record to look back on. I actually really enjoy looking back at some of my old journals, especially the life events that turned out to be really important that I maybe didn't know at the time. And when I flip open a journal from a year ago and see uncertainties I had that I've now solved, or goals I was just dreaming about that I've since achieved, it helps create a sense of progress and lets me look back and see how far I've actually come, which can be difficult to do day to day when it still feels like there's so much ahead. So not only does journaling help me become much more self-aware, work through difficult emotions, but it's also just a great physical record of my own progress and the important things in my life. So to recap, if you want to start journaling but you've never been able to build the habit consistently, commit to honesty from the start, start small, find a time of day that really works well for you and stick to that time, pat yourself on the back while you're journaling, and make it fun. Thanks for watching.